If you want to learn how to make, if you want to learn how to make this out of this, you're in the right place. Let's make Corona bread.
Look at that whiteboard. Way better than last time. Alright, for the ingredients, you're going to need 450 grams of bread flour, plus 50 grams of whole wheat flour. If you don't have whole wheat, you could probably just use more bread flour. Should be fine. Then this is where things get fun. The juice of half of a lime and a whole bottle of Corona beer. This is going to be Flavor Town for the bread. Then 10 grams of salt, plus 3 grams of instant yeast. And if you need these ingredients in cups and tablespoons, check the description. Let's get this bread. The cool thing about this bread is it's basically my white bread recipe with beer. And this beer is going to give it an awesome flavor because beer and bread are basically the same ingredients, but beer is way more fun. So go ahead and pour in the 12 fluid ounces of Corona beer. If you took a sip like I did, that's fine. 11.9 ounces, probably okay. Then you're going to go ahead and mix in the juice of half of that lime. Make sure to take out any seeds if any fall in. You do not want to be chewing on seeds. Then watch what happens when I pour in all of the yeast. There's something about mixing the yeast in this recipe with the beer, which already has yeast in it, that just makes it bubble up and fizz up super fast. Check this out. Like 5 seconds later, we've got all these bubbles and a super yeasty smell. This is going to be fun. Just fun. Go ahead and pour your dry ingredients in. All of the bread flour, then all of that whole grain flour, the whole wheat flour, and then you can just pour the salt right on top of that. At this point, grab your dough whisk and just start mixing all the ingredients together until it forms a nice cohesive dough. If you don't have a dough whisk, you can just use a wooden spoon, or your hands, or whatever you want. Then once your dough looks like this, and nothing's really sticking to the side of the bowl anymore, you're ready to knead. Turn out your dough onto your clean counter. Don't put any flour down. Then go ahead and smell your dough, because it smells amazing from all that beer and lime. Then you're just going to want to knead this for about 3 to 4 minutes. Honestly, you don't need to knead for a full 8 minutes for this recipe. I found that 3 minutes was just fine. So just keep kneading, cleaning up all those dry bits of flour on the counter, and keep going for 3 minutes until the dough feels just smoother and better. You'll see. This is what you're looking for. Once you've kneaded for about 3 to 4 minutes and your dough looks like this, you're ready to go. So just kind of smooth this out into a round ball. Use your bench scraper if you have one. There's a link in the description box if you want to buy one of these. They're really cheap. Then just kind of smooth out the edges of your dough with your hands until you've got a nice tight ball. Then transfer this dough ball into an oiled bowl, making sure to get oil on both sides of the dough ball. Then you're just going to cover this up lightly, like so. Then once your dough is covered up, let it rise on the counter for 2 to 3 hours or until it's about doubled in size. Then after 2 hours, your dough should look something like this, puffy and doubled in size. If it still hasn't doubled in size, give it another hour of rising time, maybe even 2 more hours. If your kitchen is cold, it just might take longer. Be patient. Now sprinkle some flour onto your counter, and we're going to turn out the dough onto the floured surface. So just move your hand around the bowl, trying to get the dough out in one big piece. You should have a sticky side on top and a floured side on bottom. Now it's time to pre-shape the dough into a ball. So grab an edge of the dough like this and pull it in over the center. Grab the next edge, pull it in on top of that. Keep going around the dough, grabbing an edge, pulling it over the center until there aren't any edges left. Once the dough is smoothed out into a ball, you can then just flip it over, seam side down, onto the clean part of your counter. Just like this. There we go. Then just clear out some of this extra flour with your bench scraper, make a nice clean area for yourself. And to finish the pre-shape, we're just going to tighten the ball, creating some more tension in the dough, just doing this cupping and pulling motion a few times. Once you have a tight ball of dough, cover it up and let it rest for 15 minutes. While your dough is resting, go ahead and grab a baking sheet where you can bake your bread and line it with some parchment paper or a silicone mat like I have here. This just allows me not to have to use parchment paper every time. And even though it's non-stick, I like to sprinkle this mat with some whole wheat flour. Kind of just gives the bottom of the bread a nice crunchy bottom. Who doesn't like crunchy bottoms? And when the dough is rested for 15 minutes, it's time to give it its final shape. You can really shape your dough into whatever shape you want your bread to look like, but if you want to follow my shaping technique, just follow my lead. I like to flour the top, then flip the dough over, and I'm just going to roll it into kind of a log shape like this. So I'm just going to dimple the dough out, just to flatten it a little bit. Then I'm going to take the right third of the dough and fold it over the middle third. Then I'm going to take the left third of the dough and fold that over the middle third as well. Just going to press down the seam. Then I'm going to tuck and roll the dough like this, rolling it over itself a few times until I have a nice, just log shape. Then transfer your dough onto your baking sheet and cover it up and let it proof for 1 hour. Then preheat your oven to 450 Fahrenheit and go ahead and slip a baking sheet in with some hot water. That's going to create steam in your oven. After an hour of proofing, your dough should be ready to bake, and it's super fun to poke at this point. See? If it's fragile, but still holding its shape, it's ready to go. Then grab a serrated bread knife and put 3 slashes in your dough like this. These score marks are going to allow the bread to rise in the oven in kind of a more attractive way. If we don't put these marks in, the bread will just bust open on the sides. Plus they look kind of cool. Bake this at 450 degrees for 35 minutes. After about half the baking time, you can turn your bread around if it's getting darker on one side than the other. I thought, why not? Then after you turn the bread around, take the steam pan out of your oven carefully. We shouldn't need that anymore. Then just close the oven and continue baking for the remaining time. After 35 minutes, your bread should look something like this. Take it out of the oven very carefully. This bread doesn't quite smell like beer or lime or Corona Extra, but it's just like better than all of those things. It's Corona bread. Remember to wait at least an hour before you slice into this bread. It'll taste just so much better if you wait. It's been an hour for me and I'm so ready to slice into this bread and let you know what it tastes like. The exterior of this bread is pretty crusty. It's definitely got a crunch to it, but if you wait at least an hour, it's pretty easy to slice through. And for how crunchy this bread was on the outside, the inside was super soft and delicate. And the flavor of this bread, it's like next level white bread. That Corona really packs a flavor punch. After trying this bread plain, I toasted up a slice, added some avocado, sprinkle of salt, a little squeeze of lime, and I 100% stand behind this recipe and this combination of toppings. That was how to make Corona bread out of real Corona beer. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to learn how to make great bread, sourdough, and pizza at home, hit that red subscribe button. Later, guys.